I'm Dr. Jody Robanis, and in a few moments we're going to be looking at a lecture about how to write your code of ethics if you're in a profession or career that's related to family consumer sciences such as child development. But before we get started on how to write that code of ethics, we're going to spend some time talking about the family consumer sciences body of knowledge.
Because a profession's body of knowledge is its universal stance on what is important in that profession, it provides an ideological blueprint for viewing ethical issues and other phenomena. Buttressed by individual well-being, family strength, and community vitality, the core concepts of the family consumer sciences body of knowledge combine to target the central concern of meeting basic human needs. Hence, focuses the lens of the family consumer sciences body of knowledge on improving the quality of life for individuals, families, and communities. We're going to look a little bit more at the core concepts from the perspective of child development. Basic human needs. When you think about meeting the basic human needs of a child, you might think about Maslow's hierarchy. McGregor suggests that we take a look from Max Neff's perspective. She says that regardless of culture, fundamental human needs are the same. It is what people can do to satisfy the need that is culturally determined, not the need themselves. And some of those basic needs that are culturally satisfied are subsistence, protection, affection, understanding, participation, leisure, creation, identity, and freedom. So what does optimized individual well-being look like as an outcome of basic human needs? Individual well-being. From a child's perspective, we think about material well-being, including enough food, clothes, shelter, bodily well-being, social well-being, as in being cared for, and the foundation to develop good relationships with family and community. Security, including physical safety and emotionally secure environment. Psychological well-being, and this includes many of the aspects considered in the child development major, thinking about Erikson, Piaget, Vygotsky, looking at attachment theory. Also includes, importantly, seeds of faith development, family strength. Strength can be defined as quality or state of being strong, having vigor, moral power, firmness, courage, capacity to manifest energy. Resiliency is a very important aspect of family strength. Resiliency is how members interact with each other and with others outside the family to cope with situations of daily life. The protective characteristics of the family are to endure. And of course, we find a strong faith as being crucial here. Community vitality. Well, communities are defined as groups that join together in various ways and places for the purpose of sharing common interests and establishing common systems of support, identity, and belonging. Communities sustain vitality through what's called social capital. Social capital is energy and information embedded in relationships among people, which they can draw to facilitate activity of social and personal benefit. So these are the core concepts. Human ecosystems and life course development are theories, and a big part of those theories are seeing families as ecosystems. These two theories provide the integrative, synergistic, holistic element of the family consumer sciences body of knowledge. On the periphery of the model, you'll see the cross-cutting themes of capacity building, global interdependence, resource development and sustainability, wellness, and appropriate use of technology.
I have to tell you is I embarked on this study of ethics because when I took my first graduate class, it was on philosophy of education, and we talked a lot about ethics, and really didn't have an idea of oh, there's different ethical perspectives that people could have. And I think being at a Christian college that we think about that a little bit more than now today than we have in the past. But it's very much from my own experiences. And today what we'll be doing is we're gonna spend some time at the end of this lecture talking about your philosophy and also code of ethics. And one of the things that I'm hoping that you're going to do is have just a little piece of paper and just kind of, you don't have to take notes of everything that I have here. But what I hope you do is you just start writing words that, oh, that's me. Integrity, that's me. Oh, relative ethic, that's me. Just start writing some words that just click for you. And it doesn't have to make sense. What you're going to come up with at the end of today, I hope, is 10 words, maybe a few sentences that you can plug into your philosophy and your code of ethics. And really, these are very interchangeable. I know we do both in this class. Your philosophy will be more of a global statement. Both of them require your worldview on things, and your code of ethics will be kind of a set of rules. So here's our objectives that we're going to be doing today. And the first thing we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about different ethical perspectives. And it was a model that was developed really to help you think about an ethical professional problem from different perspectives. Now, one of the things that I hope that we're going to do today is we're going to see what makes you tick. How do you normally approach an ethical problem? What perspective, ethic of justice, care, critique, profession, what's your first initial approach to a problem? Now, the reason why we're going to spend some time here is because I want you to know what your initial approach is so that you can also look at an ethical problem from those other perspectives. All the perspectives are very helpful. And we'll especially spend some time later today talking about the ethic of care, because that's really foundational to family consumer sciences. So, and this is really big for decision making, because this can really help you as a professional too. And I know a lot of you are probably ethic of care. Sometimes it's really hard to approach a problem from a different perspective, but this kind of gives you a lens to see what that problem looks like from those other perspectives. The very best ethically reasoned decisions are reasoned from multiple perspectives. Okay, and then the other piece that we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at what we call normative ethics. Doesn't that sound important? Normative ethics, yeah. Well, basically, it's kind of the rules, the ethics of the profession. And we're going to be talking about the FCS body of knowledge, the Family Consumer Sciences body of knowledge that I know you're all familiar with, but we're going to spend some more time talking about that today. And basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the body of knowledge and talking about the ethics that are associated with that body of knowledge. Now, the reason why we're doing that in this class is because you're writing your codes of ethics, you're writing your philosophies. You probably chose this major because something about people, something about community, maybe it's sustainability, but we're going to look at the body of knowledge, and I want you to be reflecting on why you chose this major and articulate it. And then we'll spend a little bit of time at the end of constructing a professional philosophy statement and your code of ethics. Now, the reason why I'm tying in both of these is because they both require your worldview. So, any ready to go? Move on? I know. All right. Okay, so what does it mean to be a professional? And I have to say that being a Point Loma Nazarene University Family Consumer Sciences professional really does mean something. You know, there's just a certain work ethic that you have, an approach that you have. I encourage you to think more about that. But some things that you might be, some paradigms that you might be using to construct your code of ethics, to construct your philosophy statement is you could be looking at principles, values that we'll be talking about, so that might be some of the things that you write down as we go through today. It also might be, one of the first things we're going to talk about are looking at the different ethical perspectives. We're going to talk about that model. It might be talking about yourself, especially in your philosophy statement, talking about what ethical perspective you have. And a reason why we are going to spend some time talking about these ethical perspectives too is it's not that each one is a complete traditional ethical perspective, but each one of these has some faults too. So if you know which perspective you are, you know how to balance it too with the other perspectives. And then we're going to be looking at the normative ethics of the, what do you guys think that stands for? Family Consumer Sciences Body of Knowledge. Now, and what, does anyone know what this is? This model is down there? That's right. That's the body of knowledge. Very good. And we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about it. I noticed wellness isn't on the picture there. I just wrote an article that we don't need wellness because it's already part of the body of knowledge. Okay. Listen to my words. If you're a visual person, you can use this model too, but this is the first one we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the different ethical perspectives. And I want you, as I go through this discussion, I want you to think about what type of perspective you are. We're going to do a case study at the end of this first discussion, and it's really to see which perspective you are so that you can start to balance your reasoning with other perspectives. So I love that you all know the mission of Family Consumer Sciences of the profession to improve the quality of lives of individuals, families, and communities. And that's exactly what's at the heart of this ethical decision-making model, is that all of your professional decisions should be towards improving the quality of life for individuals, families, and communities. On the outside of this model are the different ethical perspectives. Now, there's really just 3 ethical perspectives: the ethic of justice, the ethic of care, the ethic of critique. The ethic of profession is our codes of ethics, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. So let's talk about the ethic of justice, and we're really comfortable with ethic of justice. Yeah, and laws, statutes, rules, even our course syllabus. You know that course syllabus? Those are kind of the rules for the class that you're going to take. Ethic of justice is very Western traditional ethical approach. Aristotle was the first. Kant with the moral imperative of rules that are in place. Child development majors, you're probably especially familiar with Lawrence Kohlberg. Remember looking at moral development and basically 3 levels: the pre-conventional, where the child will base his ethical reasoning on pain, pleasure, that pre-conventional. Conventional, looking at the norms of the group, what are the rules of the group, that's conventional. And then post-conventional is on higher principle, that, well, maybe the rules of the group aren't always as important, but the principles are, such as integrity, honesty, so being willing to move beyond that conventional level. Only about 20% of the population, by the way, ever makes it to that post-conventional stage where you're willing to make an ethical decision based on your principles. And guess what? People who graduate from Christian colleges are more likely than any other population that we know of looking at adolescents. So that's good. That's good, right? So, okay, what gender tends to make decisions like this? It's the right thing to do. It's fair. Didn't you follow the rules? Huh? Females. No. And that's actually what's so hard, is because they'll say, you know, guys will say to the girl, he's got to speak up. I'm sure you should be happy that Eric's here. You know? But she knows he just smiles, sits up at the front too. I don't think he had a choice, actually. I think it was the last seat. But and you think about that, and sometimes discourse, male, female, this can be problematic sometimes. You know, the facts. Here's the rules. Don't you get it? What do we women often do? But yeah. So that's a problem with this ethic of justice. It's so rules-based that it doesn't really look at the people, the situation. So a really good balance to the ethic of justice is the ethic of care. All right. By the way, I'll say is that ethic of justice, if you're going into administration, the rules that you need to follow. In fact, Professor Rogers and I were talking, I always pick on her when I do this, but yeah. But we were talking about some rules, some new rules that we have to uphold and follow, and of course we're going to do it because we don't want to get in trouble, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So how many of you think you've got some ethic of justice? You're comfortable with it? Yeah. Ethic of care, yes, I heard Sean go, ah. Ethic of care, in fact, Carol Gilligan was a student of Lawrence Kohlberg's, and she was doing this notation of interviews with children and trying to assess their moral development. And because Kohlberg's work was really based on the ethic of justice, where following the rules, the principles, that was what was guiding the ethic, boys were actually scoring very well. And Kohlberg came to the conclusion that girls are just not as morally developed. Sean's smiling now. She didn't buy into that. In fact, what she did is she just changed the premise on which the measurement was done. Instead of it being on justice, it was on relationships, on care, on people. So once she changed that premise from rules, principles, orientation to people, she found girls to be just as morally developed. And this is actually a fairly new ethic. We haven't talked about it. It's really been in the last 20 years that it's been recognized as being a valued ethic. I'm just thinking about, of course it makes sense to us, and a lot of my writing actually, my most recent scholarship has really been looking at family consumer sciences is based on an ethic of care because individuals, families, and communities, and explaining why. Sometimes we think that it's not very credible if you care about people, but you think about that's for many of us that's the most powerful credibility. So ethic of care is this notion that you're responsible to other people. People who have this ethic of care, they view their life in relationship to other people, connection. That conversation that we were having with the guy friend and we weren't following the rules, our buts were, did you think about how she was experiencing it? Did you think about the situation, the contextualness, the people orientation? This is very much the ethic of care. I mentioned families as ecosystems. That's really premier to family consumer sciences body of knowledge and why the body of knowledge works, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So here's some theorists in the area. How many of you know your ethic of care? Yeah, you definitely. Yeah, thank you, Sean. Yep, yeah. Okay, yeah, very good. All right. This is the third major ethical perspective that we're going to be talking about. There's one more, but that's the one that brings them all together. This is the ethic of critique. And I have to tell you is several years ago, before I was a professor here, I was presenting at a conference at Point Loma, the California Association of Family Consumer Sciences. And there were some Point Loma students, and I was talking about this ethical model. And we were talking about the ethic of critique, and a student was saying, oh, yes, this world is really screwed up, and the generations before me have ruined the environment, and she was going on about several things. But then she said, but I'm going to do something about it. Okay, that's the ethic of critique. I kind of laughed because I thought to that student is people my generation aren't usually that bold of talking about what's wrong, but you're going to fix something. But we're seeing with your generations, generations coming up, of recognizing the problem. And you think about that is honestly recognizing a problem before you can fix it is an important piece. One of my favorite quotes is, it's not enough to care about something, you've got to do something about it, by someone named Arcus. That's the ethic of critique. What we look at is who's in power, where the power is, who can make the decisions, whose voice isn't heard, whose voice is heard. Looking at wealth, who has the resources, who doesn't, and what are these barriers to fairness? What can we do for fairness? I don't know if you can see this picture. It's really quite distressing, yeah, of looking at wealth and just what that can mean. This is looking at the Senate, United States Senate, around the late 1700s. And this is looking, and notice the mono phenotype. It's all white males. And you can see you can't see the faces, but you certainly can see the color and a little bit more diversity, that we are starting to evolve, a little bit of difference there. Now, I know some of you, I know some of you are this ethic of critique, of feeling comfortable with change. It's a different ethical perspective of looking at what a situation is, what are the rules, and maybe I don't need to follow the rules. Martin Luther King said, it's your moral obligation, your moral responsibility to not follow an unjust rule. So you shouldn't follow a rule that's a law that's bad. And we think about the Jim Crow laws that we had as late as the 1960s. Okay, so how many of you think you're a little bit of this ethic of critique? Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I think some of you, all right. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I didn't. Well, we've got one of the strongest ethic of critique students I've ever had is in this room right now. So, and she's turning red right now. Sometimes it's uncomfortable for a woman to have the ethic of critique because it's who are you to question things. So I think we have the better pathways sometimes too. Okay. Professional codes of ethics, that's the fourth one. I encourage you to look at some of these different codes of ethics. They could give you some really great perspective. I'm going to take a peek at a couple of them, but I hope that before you go work for a school district, you work for a clothing company, you work for anything, you go join a professional organization, you look at what their philosophy is, you look at their code of ethics, and see if that really lines up with you, right? Yeah. Okay, this is the American Association of Family Consumer Sciences Code of Ethics. I'm smiling because I complained one day, ethic of critique, I said, this needs to be changed, and we can wordsmith it all we want, but we need to have a serious revision. So guess who was next year chair of the ethics committee, and it was actually really hard to be responsible for chairing the change because as chair, trying to keep my mouth shut. But one of the things, I know you can't see it very well, but I wanted we're talking about form of ethics, is that this code of ethics, there's some core values listed, but then there's principles are listed. And one of the first principles that we talk about is integrity. So that's something for you to think about too. But I know that integrity tends to be a very strong principle for Point Loma students. And really, what does integrity mean? That authenticity between what you say you're going to do and doing it, being true. There's some other things listed here. I'll mention confidentiality. This actually, it's a principle confidentiality, but it's also thinking about the ethic of critique as being voice is not to violate your power over someone with information. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do one case study, and I'll go ahead and read it to you. And what I want you to do is we're going to read this problem, this situation to you, and I want you to think of how you would resolve it, what you feel most comfortable in resolving. Now, what I'm going to be interested in hearing is what ethical perspective you have. I'm not going to give you a right or a wrong answer, but it's just the perspective that you like to take, the people orientation, the change the rules orientation, or follow the rules orientation, or what does the code of ethics say? So let's do this. Okay, this is a good one. You run a preschool program that encourages exploration. One of the popular centers in your program is a socio-dramatic play station where children are given a variety of props to encourage role-playing and discovery. Doesn't that sound Piaget, Vygotsky? Yeah. Currently, the station is set up as house, and a variety of home items are available, such as kitchen equipment and furniture. Allie is a 4-year-old boy. In your preschool program, Allie's father, Farouk, approached you that he is very concerned that his son is role-playing as a mom at this station. Farouk is Pakistani, and his family adheres to traditional Pakistani values. What should you do? So I'm going to give you a minute and just think about it, and then talk to your table of what you think the right thing to do. Now, I realize that not all of you are in child development. All right, does anyone feel comfortable sharing what they thought should be done? Thank you, Paige.
I just actually wanted to clarify something.
Okay.
It doesn't say that he's actually he takes the role of mom in the situation. Is that do you know, or is Dad just jumping to a conclusion?
Yes. Yes and yes.
Okay, because they're gonna say if he if he was just pretending to clean and cook, that doesn't necessarily mean he's pretending to be a mom. He could just, like you were saying, he's just reflecting what he's seeing. What you said is completely normal for his age.
Okay, so you're taking it from the perspective of the child, and he's dramatic play of what he's seen and what it feels like. So that's what the center's supposed to do. Okay, all right. So that's actually perspective taking. That might be a little bit more ethic of care, but where you're going with that too. So keep that thought. Anyone else? Oh, what would you do?
I would tell Farouk, the dad, that this is just a time for him to have imagination. He's doing what he wants to do. He's growing in his imagination, and it's okay. I don't know.
Well, Farouk, his dad, that's not okay. My culture says that that's not okay. All right? But you're, again, taking the perspective of the child. Yep.
I think I would, if it was at my center, I would tell them here we let the kids explore and do model however they want, and this is what happens at the center, and at home if you want to raise your child however you want to, that's fine, but here at the center he's allowed to do this, and it's not a bad thing, and I'm not going to tell him to stop type thing. And just
So the rules, justice orientation. Yep. Okay.
I'd probably explain to him what you were saying, how in school that he enjoys.
Oh, okay. So it's changing it a little bit, bringing in some more information. Okay, you're starting actually to move towards critique of, or seeing it perspective of the family, of what the environment is. So maybe more ethic of care, of taking it from the perspective of the family. Okay, good. That's good. That's a big, because we've been looking at the child's perspective. So now we're the family perspective. We've talked a little bit about the culture, difference in culture. That's another issue to think about. Yes.
We said that we would explain to the dad that just what developmental stage he's in, and more so educate him on that they're at that point in preschool don't have such defined gender stereotypes.
Yeah. So that's a philosophical challenge right there, is that you as a caregiver see concerns about holding those views, but yet that's dad's right to raise the child like that. But you said something else about, and it's so powerful in preschool settings, in any type of education setting where there's good communication from what's happening at the school to the family. And I know we do that a lot at the Early Childhood Learning Center, but that's part of the parent becoming educated too. How this was actually done, this is from a professional association. This didn't happen to me, but this actually happened. And what they did is they just changed the sociodramatic play available to that child when that child was there. So house was not an opportunity for that child, which seems strange, but the thinking is to be respectful to the culture of the family, yeah, and yet provide that child equal, better, not better, but just other opportunities. So, and that's actually, does anyone know what ethic that is, how that was actually resolved? Is that justice? Actually not justice, care, or critique. It's actually critique, yeah, because it's changing up the rules and what's going on there. So you guys got that now. So there's a whole lot going in this, is perspective taking. It's not just the child, it's the family, it's the institution, looking at what the rules are and then changing the rules. Yeah, so the point that I'm trying to make here is it's real powerful for you not to just approach a problem from one ethical perspective. It's for you to look at it from the different ethical perspectives. So how many kind of on this you felt like you were more of a justice oriented? Okay, what are the rules? Yeah. Yeah, and that's good for you to know about yourself, is that I tend to approach these situations with justice, and I, especially as a woman, because, oh, she's hard, she follows the rules all the time. Boy, she's really, dietetics majors, that usually is very true. Yeah, it's actually, and it's yeah, we see that a lot. Ethic of care, anyone about the child center? Lot of you. Okay, Paige, and that's all right. And ethic of critique, we started to see some of that. Okay, yeah, all right. Okay, so that's the, we're not gonna do anymore. So this is just the model. We've seen the different ethical perspectives. The focus is on improving the quality of life for individuals, families, and communities. In your professional work, you might be focusing more on the family, you might be focusing more on the individual or the community. And I'm thinking the nutrition idea, looking at WIC, you might be, working with the mom and her child if you're interacting with the client, but if you're an administrator, you might be thinking more from the community perspective. So there's not just one of these spheres that you're going to focus on. This is what the Family Consumer Sciences body of knowledge looks like. But really, when we think about it, I'm hoping that I'm describing you as a major too, of why you're in your major, why you're in your field. We've got the core concepts, which are all basic human needs is central to all these core concepts. Individual well-being is the first place, and we look at that individual well-being as having a gamut of needs that need to be met. I actually just finished a piece of scholarship that talks about how faith is relevant in all of these pieces, but most recent writings look like they talk about spirituality, but I think it's faith. Family strengths, family resiliency, the family being able to bounce back, and then community vitality. We talk often about social capital, about having a strong community that supports strong families, that in fact supports individuals, and we see these all relating, that when we have strong families, that then we have individual well-being and we have community vitality. So those are the core concepts, and I'll talk a little bit more about those, but those, you can also think of those as end results. That's what our goal is. That's what all our professional decision making is towards reaching those goals. Then we have our interpretive elements, which are human ecosystems, and it's really the perspective of seeing families as ecosystems, that we believe that families, strong families, just make it all happen. When you've got a strong family, we have strong individuals, we have strong communities. And this notion of seeing families in different contexts, in different cycles, there's a whole lot to it there. And then life course development is a theory that pulls that all in together. So this is very contextual. It's looks at systems interacting with other systems, having influences. And then on the outside, the periphery of the model, we have our cross-cutting themes, and these are changed throughout time. Wellness, appropriate use of technology, capacity building, global interdependence, and resource development and sustainability. So that's the body of knowledge. And I'm sure that if I turn this off, you guys could recreate that on a piece of paper. You probably would come pretty close to it. Okay, wanted to just mention, I'm talking now about the normative ethics. So these are the rules kind of being in family consumer sciences. These are things that really define your worldview. So this should give you some fodder for your philosophy statements. Yeah. Okay, so we've got two things going on with that makes the body of knowledge a relational or ethic of care. And one thing is that the core concepts, these core concepts are what we're attentive to. So we're trying to meet basic human needs, whether it be clothing, whether it be food, whether it be relationship development. so it's meeting those basic human needs with these other core concepts buttressing it. Then we have our integrative elements, and what the integrative elements do that relate to a relational ethic is that it's a relational ontology, which is just a fancy word of saying is that when you buy into this ethic, that you see things around you, you see people, you see experience, you see things in relation to other things, so that we exist as human in relation to other people, that we see the context of a situation, and that actually tends to be very much ethic of care. We just call it relational ethic. We can see multiple contexts, that we can look at an ethical problem and we can see it in different situations. We think about things in different perspective, different contexts. And then the other piece that really defines it as a relational ethic, there's actually 4 pieces here, is permeable boundaries. And we all know this is like what happens at home affects what happens at work. And you guys think about that and you just, I don't know, you just have a bad class, or you forget something was due, and I don't, you're just not doing well, and how that just affects everything else during the day. And then your sweet mate is upset with you because you're being such a grump, and then she's having, you know, all that stuff. So that's what those permeable boundaries are. So that's why we're a relational ethic. And another aspect of normative ethics is teleological and deontological, which just means that we have a product orientation and a process orientation. So the body of knowledge also tells us these things. So our goal orientation is our teleological concerns. So our goal is basic human needs and these core concepts. And then our process orientation is the integrative elements. It's the seeing things in multiple contexts and in different perspectives, and the idea of permeable boundaries. So those are the relational ethics in the body of knowledge. And what I'd like for you to just kind of take a minute here. I'm hoping you guys have some words. Have we come up with some words so far? Think about looking at the core concepts of where do you really gravitate towards? You know, are you more of a basic human needs? Is there an area here that really makes sense for you? Like you see your work doing? Is it community? Is it individuals? We're going to talk a little bit about Thornton's work. And so this is another ethical perspective, something that you can think about. And basically what Thornton came up with was 7 different lenses. So this is in fact a third thing that we're going to be talking about today. And profit, law, character, people, communities, planet, and greater good. And so this can help you kind of think about where your focus is. And just take a minute. So in an organization, this would be in your place of work, very related to a professional ethic. Is your focus on profit? Is it on the law, character, people, communities, planet, and greater good? I don't know if you guys can kind of see any progression here and how these relate. I think go 1. All right. And you kind of, here's another way of looking at it, is kind of concern for self is profit. Follow the law so you don't get in trouble, right? Starting to get concern for other, character, people, communities, and then concern for society. So where do you think your faith falls on this? Anyone have any thoughts where it could fall?
The greater good.
I think so. I think that's, yeah. Okay. All right, well, what I'd like to do now is I would like to, what I'd like to do now is I'd like for you to just take a little bit of time and think about what principles work for you, such as authenticity, integrity, honesty, trustworthiness, responsibility, accountability, pursuit of excellence. There's lots of, those are principles. So think of if you have any principles that work for you, be thinking about those. Also be thinking about a goal orientation. American Association of Family Consumer Sciences Code of Ethics, and we talk about a vision that we have, individuals, families, and communities, achieving optimal quality of life, assisted by competent caring professionals whose expertise is continually updated through the American Association of Family and Consumer Sciences. So that's our vision. And this actually is included in this Code of Ethics. I know that this is separate for you all, so you might not have this here. But the reason why it's here, along with the actual mission of the association, is because it's kind of that overall perspective. Then we have a listing of values. It's a nice thing to do, and of course it says promote an integrative and holistic approach aligned with the FCS body of knowledge to support professionals who work with individuals, families, and communities. So here's why I wanted actually to bring the AAFCS Code of Ethics in front of you, and this is really the principal portion. Is you can write a code of ethics that it's a list of basically rules. And this one happens to be integrity. It's based on principles. So it lists the principle and then it lists what that means to the individual. You'll probably find too that your personal code of ethics crosses over to your professional code of ethics. Professional competence is listed here. So this is a principle-oriented code of ethics. Respect for diversity, confidentiality. And it's pretty short. This Code of Ethics actually shrunk from before because philosophically this Code of Ethics went from trying to solve every problem to be more global. So I want to show you one other Code of Ethics to give you some ideas. NCFR, the National Council of Family Relations, and this is for, they have a credential that's a family life educator. So it has a preamble, but I want you to look at something very different with this Code of Ethics. So it says ethical principles for parent and family life educators. So it looks at relationships with parents and families, and it lists what that's going to look like, should look like. Relationship with children and youth, and what that looks like, relationship with colleagues and profession. So very different way to write your Code of Ethics is what type of ethical perspective is reflected in this Code of Ethics. It's care. Why is it care? Yeah, it's talking about relationships and people, so it's the orientation to people. So that's kind of a cool way to do it too, but that really reflects an ethic of care there. All right, so what I'd like you to do is to spend a little bit of time getting some words down and be thinking about what you want what format you're going to use. You can do either way. It could be a principles orientation kind of Code of Ethics, or it can be a people orientation. I guess it could be what you want to change, when you're going to advocate, and then that could be the ethic of critique. I'm realizing too is that something else you might want to reflect on is your strength finders. That's a really good source for what makes you tick. Yeah, so like positivity could be one of your optimism. All right, can I have some brave soul? And actually, I'd want, if 3 people could go, that would be ideal. A brave soul, just share. And you'll be happy that you shared because I'm going to give you more insight. Thank you, Eric.
Responsibility, developer, thinker, drive for success, and passion.
Okay. Say that first one.
Responsibility.
Responsibility. Okay, that's an interesting one. It's funny that you say that because that was one that's really high for me too. But responsible to other people, we can count on you to get the job done. It's interesting that you listed that first. But wouldn't you want to work with someone who's responsible? They do what they say they're going to do. I mean, in the workplace, I've been in situations where that's not true. Yeah. Developer, so you're probably motivated by seeing other people reach their potential. That excites you. You probably have also a high level of excellence also, that says that there's a lot of confidence that you have too, is that you're confident enough in yourself that you don't worry about other people reaching their potential. And then thinker, so you're reflective, that you think through things. Someone else. Thank you.
I have integrity, character, also responsibility, attitude, and faith.
Faith, yeah. And I would think that everyone at Point Loma, that you're going to have a faith component part of it. All right, one more person. Yes. Yeah.
It said inclusion, capability, developer, and connection.
Okay, inclusion. So, and talk a little bit about that.
Like including kids with special needs in situations and communities of difficult developing children.
Okay, so including everyone, and also that we're different, but we're all included, we're all together. That might be something that you think about more too, the importance that, especially for you to list that, so early in this process. But also think about that a little bit too, why is that important? And I know from my own philosophy of education is just this real passion about someone's different than us, that they bring awareness, a different perspective, whether it be special needs, lots of just that difference from us, that can make the group stronger, that we're enriched when we're included, and not embrace diversity, embrace that differentness. Yeah, I think that's a good one. Yeah, something to think about. This is such a powerful exercise that you'll be doing, and I hope that you keep these codes of ethics, these philosophy statements. What is so shocking to me is when I was in your shoes, actually I was about a couple years older, my philosophy on, I had to write it on teaching, on education, it hasn't changed very much. I have bigger words now to describe my thoughts, so no one can't understand what I'm trying to say, but the basic foundation is there, that you're here for a reason. You've probably already thought about those ideas and things, but take some good think time, some quiet time to write that down. I think the other piece that's so powerful about this is the exercise of writing this code of ethics. There's something about writing your code of ethics, and now you have to uphold it. This is your code of ethics. So you've thought about it, you've crystallized what your thoughts are, but when it's created like that, you have to uphold it, and it helps define who you are as a person.